Welcome to the kitchen table.
Podcast where everything's made up and the points don't matter.
I'm Chris.
I'm Josh, and today we're talking about
First level games.
first levels of games, openings, startings, beginnings, if you will. We're trying a new setup. Hopefully, I'm actually not really digging it now that I'm looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
But is one of the greatest feelings in life is starting a new game. Would you say,
For sure.
there's something about it, but obviously, because games have been going on for so long now, the way you start games is kind of varied. But I think before you just kind of just be like, you just hit start, and with a lot of games being platformers, you just kind of start and just move to the right and run, jump.
Played itself out.
Yeah, I just kind of did this thing. But over time, stuff's kind of evolved and games have gotten more complicated, so they've kind of introduced all these different ways to, set you up for success in the game, or kind of just teach you things, like whether or not it's like the tutorial or sometimes like big elaborate cutscene, or just straight up throwing you into a fight or something. So they've come up with all ways, but there's at a certain point though they're also not that unique. They kind of like get a little tropey. There's you look for. You're like, oh, this is how this game's starting. It's doing that thing, that like an unbeatable boss or a win to lose situation, which we'll go over. But I kind of want to start off with talking about either memorable ones or favorite ones. I'm gonna try not to shake the table too much. Just ones that really stick out in your mind. Like, man, you started, and you're like, oh, I like this. The rest of this game's gonna be good because I like the way that something just resonated with you. What comes to mind?
Well, I'm going to go with Uncharted.
Of course, Uncharted.
I'm going to go with Uncharted 2.
All right.
Because that game starts you off in probably a little bit close to the end of the game. It just throws you into the story, and you're like, how the heck did my character end up here?
Oh, it does the Tarantino thing?
Basically, yeah. You're just thrown right into whatever situation you're going on, and then it backtracks, and then you just have to figure out, how did I get to where I originally started?
Mm-hmm.
Other ones that come to mind would probably be Medal of Honor Frontlines.
Okay, yeah, we talked about that.
That's a good childhood favorite.
That one, so that one for me too. That, I don't know about you, but that was one of my first.
FPS.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and so actually, which one I want to talk about. It reminded me about one. It was one of the first FPSs, and I remember I wasn't even during playing. My stepdad was playing, and I was just like,
"Holy crap!"
Yeah, I'm like, "Oh my god!" There's stuff going on. I'm like, "Is this the beginning of Saving Private Ryan?" Jesus Christ!
Yeah. They just shot for shot took that right to it. I mean, if they had license for the actors like Tom Hanks and stuff, that would have been just the PS2.
I would actually really like a Saving Private Ryan game. That sounds actually a lot of fun, just doing the beat for beat story stuff for that. It seemed great.
Yeah.
But yeah, that one definitely sticks out. For me, it's not as intense. It's actually more of a quieter opening, but one that kind of I really like is Final Fantasy 15's opening. It's so a lot of times people say usually the Final Fantasy that you played first is the one that you guys think's the best or favorite. I also think personally it's whatever Final Fantasy you beat first, and that was the first one I beat. Because I'd played other ones, I just never managed to beat them. But so it does the similar thing, the Uncharted 2 thing, where part of it starts. It's a dual opening. The first part's it's a oh my god, late in the story, facing this big boss. You don't actually do any of the actual fighting part. You're just kind of moving your character. You just kind of, it does mini-ish tutorial of just use the left stick to walk. It does that part, and it just kind of gives you a little screenshots of characters. You don't really know anything about your party yet. You're just this is Ignis, this is Prompto, this is Gladio. But the part that's after that, so it does that, does a cutscene, and then it just starts with you pushing the car while Florence and the Machine's cover of Stand By Me plays, and it's something, just a real especially once you get through the game, that beginning is just really encompassing for how it's this journey of brothers, and that's Final Fantasy gets a lot of flack for being kind of this disjointed mess, but the one core thing about it is that the four main characters and their interactions are real strong, and it all starts with that bit where you're you guys are stranded out of fuel, and you're just the literally first 5 minutes of the game is just pushing the car, like holding two buttons and pushing the car till you hit the next like cutscene. But it's, I don't know, something about it like just really sticks out.
Definitely, and I mean, I think we'd be a little repetitive here with the right in the action, but anytime that like, I mean, even with like movies, anytime you're like right into the middle of a story, you don't really need an explanation because your objective is clear when you're in danger.
Yeah,
You need to get out.
It's
Right.
like I'm either gonna fight or escape. It's one of the two.
So, I mean, I think those kind of openings usually resonate with me. I'm trying to think of like a quiet opening. I mean, Skyrim has a pretty quiet opening where
Until
you're,
the dragon shows up.
right, but like you have that time where you're in the wagon and you're just like, I'm a prisoner.
Yeah.
What did I do?
It does a little bit of the subtle tutorial stuff. I mean, like it's one of those weird ones where it's like I've always kind of hate this in most modern games where it's like use the left stick to move or like use the right stick to look down. It's like, I mean, yeah, this is most modern games,
Yeah.
but
I think the Far Cry games did that best with the thrown to the wolves kind of action, but they actually kind of got a little like meta. The one Far Cry, Blood Dragon.
Mhm.
I don't know if you heard of it.
I don't.
It's
I don't
like the Neo '80s, like it's like a parody.
Oh,
but
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like it's not taking itself too seriously. It's just a reskin of Far Cry 3.
Mhm.
But that one has an overly long tutorial, and it's basically just poking fun at all
The
tutorials.
modernness. I
It
gotcha.
has like the voiceover in your head, and he's like mocking you.
Yeah. But, okay, tutorial things are always just in general. It's like funny when it's like so like Dragon Ball Z Attack of the Saiyans has it where it's like, some of the characters doing, but it's always fun to see those things like imagine being in the context of the characters. You're like Krillin, why are you saying press the A button to do this? And it's like, is he having a stroke? What's happening here? It's just like weird when it's one thing like when it's just a menu or pop up thing, but it's weird when it's like a character saying it.
Right.
Like if you need to do this, hit the A button, and you're like, okay, like.
Yeah.
But I was gonna say when you brought up Medal of Honor, it actually made me think of another memorable one, and I don't know if this is like intentional. So like I think me and you are both like Nicky Jakey fans,
Yeah.
right? And so like he had his big Halo set of videos, and he brought up so Halo, the first one at least. It starts out so. A big thing like that he pointed out, by the way, if you haven't seen the Nicky Jakey videos on Halo, they're actually really good.
Definitely check those out.
So his big thing talking about like with the concept and early design of the game was that exploration was supposed to be kind of a big thing. Like, you had all the kind of FPSs before that. I'd say like the only other exception prior to this is like maybe like GoldenEye a little bit, but a lot of like the early FPSs were all like Doom clones that were all very like hallways.
You're just going through the corridors.
Yeah, there's corridors and they all kind of look the same. And I think the interesting thing with the first Halo is that you start off on like what's the Pillar of Autumn, and it's like it kind of seems very like that until you get off the ship, and so it's like I don't know if that was intentional, kind of like hey, like you've played this before, but
now we're switching it up.
it's like because like I'll admit whenever I played the first Halo, I think I was like 12 or something, and I remember actually getting a little lost because I'm like all these hallways kind of look the same, and like the only I'd have to like use like parts of the ship that were wrecked or whatever as like my markers. I'm like, okay, like there's a fiery piece of debris and stuff. I'm like, okay, it's not this way. I got to duck under that door, but like I don't know if that was meant to be like a not like poke fun and not even quite homage, but just kind of like a maybe like bait and switch of like, oh, it's not like Doom. It's got this whole open thing. But that's one that's like I'm trying to think like if we're trying to find like the actual opening. If like when you get off the ship, because I would say that
it's pretty open world.
But I'm saying like the would you consider the end of the starting level be like getting off the ship, right? Because then it's a whole other mission.
How about Horizon Zero Dawn's opening?
I'm trying to think. It's weird because I've been like plucking away at the game. I'm trying to think how it actually opens. Do you start as like when she's little and then she gets the?
Pretty sure you start when she's little. Yeah, because I remember starting it and I'm like, she's a kid.
Yeah.
I might be wrong, but I remember thinking distinctly, I'm playing as a little girl.
I will say they do.
My father, and I'm like, where's this going to go? Because I know like I'm going to be an adult. So like, how long am I going to progress?
Yeah, it's not going to be long.
Yeah.
But like similarly, it's one of those things that kind of does like the Metro Prime thing, which we'll also get into a little bit with the tropes. Is it because like a big thing, at least the first Metro Prime is like scanning stuff, and then like when you get the focus in Horizon. It really is like, hey, like this is a very, like it showcases that like the focus is going to be an integral part of gameplay. Like you use it for, like tracking enemies or noticing stuff to like look at or, pinpoint stuff. So yeah, that's what I will say though, like I'm trying to think of other ones like real memorable.
Any quiet ones that come to mind?
I'd say like, always like Pokemon.
Shadow of the Colossus is pretty quiet.
I mean, Shadow Cost is kind of a quiet game in general. It's hard to like, but
That's
yeah, I mean, yeah, because you kind of just go and it's just like, oh, but I mean, that's
kind of just lets you soak in the world.
But yeah, I guess I will say that yeah, that's kind of part of it because so a big thing with these open levels is kind of setting expectations, and that's kind of what that is. Where you're just like, okay, there's all this land, there's not a civilization or piece of society in sight, and so it's just kind of like, okay, I'm just gonna go in a direction till I
Run into something,
until you find
which
something.
is pretty good exploration. I mean,
Yeah,
leave the player up to their own devices.
I'd say I was other quiet ones. I was just like Pokemon's always like it's just because it's always starting in a small town. It's always you get tested, and it's nice. Like it's nice not to. I don't want to get too much in the tropes because we'll get that, but like not have to do a thing right away where you're just like, okay, I want to. It's like a big thing for me with Pokemon is like being in the world. So it's like, okay, like I'm in this town. This is my mom. There's a professor over there. This is my supposed best friend.
Kind of
So
get acquainted with.
Yeah, so it's nice establishing stuff. I'd say other ones though, like stick out. Like so, actually, it's funny because like a lot of people shit on Mega Man X5 for being too handholdy at the beginning, but it's weird because like for me, Mega Man X5 was the first Mega Man game I got to play, so it being handholdy, and I think I played it at I want to say I was like 9 maybe. And so even though it was real, like real handleable, like all these like text boxes popping, like every time you ran into something new, which is like I understand like if you had been playing the Mega Man X games prior to that, a lot of this was like old news. You're like, yeah, I know how to wall kick, I know how to shoot my Mega Buster, but like I'm like okay, I'm like oh like wall kicking, which by the way, every platformer needs wall kicking. I don't care, like it's one of those things. It's like I like being able to go straight up vertically a wall by just kicking at it repeatedly.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, any other quiet ones coming to mind for you?
So again, with like childhood, one comes really distinctly. I don't know if you. It was like before. Well, it was like before. Yeah, before Grand Theft Auto got into the third person open world. Back when they were top down.
Yeah.
PS1, there was a game called Driver.
Okay.
Remember this?
I think so. Yeah. Vaguely.
It was like
actually no. Yeah, I do remember that.
It was like basically the Grand Theft Auto of that day, but like
focusing on the auto part though.
Yeah, focusing just on driving. And the first level of the first game, you're in a parking garage and you need to like prove to this guy, like your contractor, that you're a good driver. So instead of just like having you learn how to drive the car, which most people would know, just D-pad and X and stuff, it gave you a checklist. And it gave you like maneuvers you needed to perform in the parking garage. Okay. And they didn't want like if you hit one of the parked cars, you failed that specific thing. So I always thought, I mean, even as a kid, that was like a pretty interesting way of taking a tutorial, and instead of just holding your hand, I think it was pretty difficult. I had my older brother do it, but it gave you like tasks that you had to do, and you just needed to perform them.
I want to say Tony Hawk kind of did the similar thing. It's like, oh, like here's how you do this trick. Yeah. That brought up a good thing with oh man, sorry. It made me think of something else with the driver thing, but oh man, it's escaping me. Sorry. But then actually, that brings me to a good point. So like, I think that's kind of interesting though. Is like also like teaching mechanics of the game is like okay. I don't know if, like so. I guess now we'll just kind of move into some of the tropes. Is like so. Does it bug you? So like you said you had to go through that list, right? Like I don't know about you, but like sometimes it bugs me when a game's doing this, like starting with its tutorial part, and then it like has a mechanic that like is like less used, but it won't let you get past it until you do it.
Like you need to slingshot with this to get across.
Yeah, but it's like in practicality of like the game later on, there's other ways to get around doing it.
So you're like, I'm not going to use that thing.
So, but like it blocks you at the beginning, like unless you learn how to do it, you're like, well, this sucks. I can't do that thing, or like I don't like it. Just feels uncomfortable to do, or whatever. Like,
yeah, I mean, I guess this is kind of more of a nuisance because if it's like a mechanic of the game that I know I'm never going to use, then it's like you just put that in there to show.
Yeah, like show how you do it. But yeah, it's like a weird, almost like Rube Goldberg way of like doing a task. And you're like, I just need to.
But I mean, like, we were playing Legend of Zelda. For the first time. Yeah. 26 years old, never played Legend of Zelda. And I mean, that was a way that like it gave me the mechanics, it gave me like what it wanted me to do, and like there were obviously things I had to do to get to somewhere. But like I had to come up with or rather rely on you to say, hey man, use the slingshot and
Yeah, or like lock on, make
or
sure to
like
lock on.
onto that and hit it there.
Yeah.
And you'll get through the door. So that was like
Yeah.
that was a better way because it was like it didn't dumb you down and it forced you to do something, but it gave you enough of like autonomy to realize to put two and two together and use these things to get across.
Well, actually, that's interesting. It's like Legend of Zelda, the interesting one, like with Ocarina of Time, is that like it does kind of both of doing the small town, but also giving you a dungeon right off the bat thing, because it's like like at the onset of it, you're like, okay, here's this town. And you gotta keep in mind too, for if you're a youngin watching this, you know, that was like the first 3D Zelda, obviously, but like also like, you know, for a lot of people, like trying to maneuver in 3D space for the first time, right? And it's before we had like figure out how to use the just a right stick, putting a right stick on something like that controls the camera. But like, so it's like the town was nice because it was like a nice like safe way to understand like, okay, like what all the buttons do, but also like this is how well or bad you do in a 3D space. You know, you're like, okay, like he jumps automatically when he hits the edge of a platform, or he rolls when he does this. So like at that beginning onset part, it's the town, but then you kind of immediately throw it into it's like, hey, there's something like you need a sword and shield. And then it's like so this is like we're kind of lumping it in together because then you get the real first easy dungeon of the Deku Tree, and it's like, which is overall as a first like level design's pretty nice because on all accounts it's like you see everything, and you know it's like there's the big web in the ground, and you're like, okay, that's you jump on it, you're like that's, and you can look down at it, and you're like, okay, that's something. There's got to be a way, and it's like if you look up, you'll notice all the ledges and stuff. You're like, okay, you can just put two together. Like if I jump from a high enough thing and go through that thing, I should be able to get through it, right? Yeah. And it's just a matter of a little trial and error if you haven't played it before, where you're just like, okay, it's it has to be the very, very highest thing. It's like I've made the mistake of going to the second tallest one and be like, nope, that wasn't it. I just bounced really high.
Yeah.
But like, it's past talk mechanics.
I don't know if this one counts as a first level. It might be cheating. If you plan on doing a demo video, then this might be cheating. But this still could be a first level. I know you don't play scary games, but the Silent Hills game.
Okay.
Remember that demo PT that came out? Like
yeah.
Ago? All right, so greatest demo ever. That
R.I.P. PT, by the way.
Yeah, right. Well, I heard the Silent Hills is supposed to be in development, but
sure.
That for an opening, it's just a corridor. It's like a hallway that you follow. I think it's square. It's a hallway. And you're just like getting haunted and you're gathering clues and you're exploring just a hallway. But that hallway is packed with so much atmosphere, and even though it's redundant, you're walking back and forth. It plays mind tricks on you. And for a demo or an opening to a game obviously you got a bunch of people hooked and they still want that game to come out. So I think that was for an opening for a game. Got me pretty
memorable. Yeah. I would say the best thing about certain ones too is just like kind of jumping back off of like Zelda and like 3D space, like, so every like 3D Mario game has had like its own like mechanic, and you're trying to figure out from the get go. So usually like the opening level of those games have like some way of introducing. So like Mario 64 is a big thing. It's just like, once again, kind of same thing with the Zelda thing, where it's like you're in, unlike original Mario like 1-1 where you're just running and jumping, you're like, okay, I'm gonna figure it out as I go. It does the thing, it's like it starts you in Peach's Castle where it's relatively safe, so you can get a chance to once again understand how Mario moves in 3D and try to figure out like just how this new like dimension works. Similarly, like once you get to Sunshine and Odyssey, like when they're throwing in new stuff like Flood or like Cappy and Odyssey, where it's like, okay, like this is how you use the cap. Like it's like I think Odyssey's open is really nice because like once again like it gives you kind of a overview of just like this is what the landscapes look like. Those are like what kind of like worlds look like. They're pretty open like this, and then like here's different ways that you can use cap. And granted, I think like there's some stuff that you have to like unlock later, but I could be wrong because I didn't play actually all the way through Odyssey. Claire did, but yeah, it does a good job of like showing you like this new, here's how this new mechanic works. Like, you know how to jump, that's the easy part, but here's this added gimmick that we've added for this game, and this how to use it. So overall though, how do you feel about tutorials at the start of like games? Like Like, do you like have it kind of sprinkled? Do you want it just all up front? Do you want a tutorial that's separate from the actual beginning of the game? Well, it's like if a game asks you, like, hey, do you want to play the tutorial or do you want to just start the game?
I mean, I would prefer they give you an option, but at the same time, it is pretty rough when you start a game. And I mean, like, common games like racing games or shooters.
Yeah. You're like one of them's gas, one of them's trigger.
Yeah, you're going to know the mechanics of those games. But for a game that, just for Legend of Zelda, if you had to show me how to do certain things.
Assigned things to the buttons and stuff like that.
Yeah, I would have to go into the menus and then just... I don't like going into menus and going on options, figuring out controls. So I guess if they give me an option, like, if I've played games like that, then I want an option.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, like, I think it might be a little case-by-case basis of, like, I think, like, Horizon's a good one, too, of, like, being, like, here's this thing, because there's some mechanics that are a little different, like, the way you sneak and stuff like that, so there's that. Actually, thinking back, also, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild does a really interesting thing, and I think, okay, here's the thing. I love Breath of the Wild, but I think it gets a little too much credit on its beginning part, because, so, the big thing with Breath of the Wild's beginning is that, so, since you've never really played a lot of them, or any of them, except for that little bit of Ocarina of Time we've done, the big thing is that he gets all his tools. He usually has to go through a dungeon, get, like, some tool, like a bomb, boomerang, whatever, but for Breath of the Wild, it gives you it all at the beginning. Granted, you still have to go through, like, shrines, which are just, like, little mini dungeons, but the difference, the one thing that, like, people say, it's like, oh, yeah, you can just go, like, they're actually, I don't know, for me, it was a little tough. I think they're a little more spread out than I cared to be. I had to, like, really, like, investigate, like, where each one was. Like, I think they could have been a little bit closer if the idea was to get them all at the beginning. Like, there's, like, a couple of them that I'm like, that's kind of hard to get to. Maybe it's just the route I took, because that's the beauty of an open world game. But, like, I remember, like, there's, like, one straight on a mountain that I'm like, this is kind of a pain to climb, and also he's, like, really cold at the top. Like I barely made it into one because I think he was, like, shivering and he was losing health. And I'm like, is there an easy way to get this one, or is there, like, a longer way? And I feel like, but like the whole concept was that you got all these power-ups at the beginning so that you can use them the rest of the game, but it seemed a little arduous, more so than I think people like to actually talk about. I think people are like, oh yeah, no, you just get them all at the beginning. I'm like, it's a little tougher, especially if you're not used to, if you haven't played one in a bit. It's like, I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm just sometimes bad at video games, but
yeah.
How do you feel about unbeatable bosses? Like, sorry, at the start of a game.
I didn't encounter... can't really think of any other one, and it's really ironic that you were talking about unbeatable bosses around the time I started Ghost of Tsushima, because, I mean, that one's the really first unbeatable boss I can think of.
And that's an odd one too, because he doesn't feel like an unbeatable boss. That's the thing, I guess. I feel like for me, like when I was fighting him, I'm like, this, like, I'm doing.
I mean, I thought I had a chance,
yeah,
right? And I was like, man, there must be like a bigger bad guy or something. I can't like beat this guy this early.
Yeah, right. You're just so badass, man.
Yeah, right. I don't mind them. I mean, I didn't mind that one because I just think it really gave me, the kick in the teeth and the motivation to be like, my character needs to, like,
learn something.
Yeah. I mean, I also don't mind when they take away powers, because it shows you what your potential was.
Yeah.
If it's like with the God of War games, you don't necessarily get the same things that you had in the beginning.
Yeah.
You get new things. I mean, ultimately, you get as powerful as you were in the beginning, but it just shows, like, what you're working towards.
I will say the only time I really mind it is, like, so like we were talking about earlier, is like a big one for me is like with like JRPGs, it's like, they give you like, when I get like the one I can think off the top of my head is like Trails Cold Steel 1 and 2, where it's like, you get characters like fully statted out characters with all these like spells and weapons and stuff, and you're just like, I don't know what any of this means. I don't know, because the thing is
too much overwhelming.
It's a little too overwhelming, but the other thing that sucks is that immediately afterwards, it sucks because, like, it's not even like I get to be that powerful thing. It's more just like I feel like I have less options. Like, so like a big one for me is like the reason like Pokemon's real interesting with its beginning, like early games in general. I don't want to go too much on a tangent of this, but like it'd be like if you started Pokemon with a bunch of really strong Pokemon that had all these like cool like moves already, because again, like the big part of Pokemon is just understanding like type advantages and stuff like that. But like if you get like, I always talk about early game Pokemon being like real sucky because it's like most Pokemon don't know a bunch of special moves yet. Like I always use the example is like for Red and Blue, the you have tackle matches, what I call them. You just tackle till one of you dies, and then you go on until like if you have Bulbasaur, you go on Vine Whip, Leech Seed, and then Vine Whip, or Charmander or Metal Claw and Ember, until you get those moves that allow you to understand like the strategy that takes place. But that doesn't happen yet. But the difference is like when you get all that from the beginning, it feels like a real like kind of like a real kick in the teeth. Like when you're just like, oh, I had all these cool options like for all these like strategies I could do, and now I'm just whack them with my sword, and then it takes forever to die, and you're just like, okay, right. Like I kind of wish I had a little bit, but then even so, if you even start the game with that, then I'm like, what am I even working towards now? Because I really feel pretty like
you don't know your potential.
Yeah, like I really feel pretty powerful. I'm ready to like one shot and stuff. Like I don't understand like where to go with that. Like I don't know. That's just me though.
Yeah.
Although, how do you feel about just actually having a boss battle at the beginning though, in general? Because we're really talking about like quiet openings, like big ones. Like I prefer, I think, like to get through like a level of something first, and then
I think you definitely need to like establish to your intro. You need to establish who your character is. What are they going up against? And like if you throw up a boss, then like, who am I fighting and why am I fighting him?
Yeah, right. Because that's a beat in like something like the intro of Final Fantasy 15. Like I can only imagine if like I said, like you are facing like essentially was like part of one of the end game bosses is that in that opening sequence, but you don't actually fight him. You kind of walk and then you like kind of hide behind a little barrier thing.
Okay, but you're still introduced to him.
Yeah, but I can only imagine like if I had to actually do that fight from the get go, because then I'd be like, well, what the hell?
Yeah,
like,
what the fuck?
Yeah, what's all this going on?
I think a good with not really giving you much in the beginning. Fallout 3. Yeah. Fallout 3, you just grow up as a kid. I mean, you go through like different stages of your life, but then once you get out of the vault, I mean, you don't really have much. You need to go like get stuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think by the same token of like it's good to be able to have like all your potential with Fallout or like probably most RPGs. Gathering your stuff is kind of more rewarding because you're like, oh, I got the next best thing to make me take on whatever's next.
Do you prefer? Did you play 4? Fallout 4?
Yeah.
Do you prefer 3 or 4? Because like, isn't 4 start off just like? Because 4 starts off, you're just a normal like dude, and then it's like you wake up and then it's like like you're trying to find your kid, right?
Yeah.
So do you have a preference out of those two?
I mean, 4 is like. I mean, I feel like 4 and 3 are the same because I mean, 3 you're trying to find your dad. 4 you're trying to find your son. I mean, I actually prefer New Vegas because
that's that.
You wake up in the grave. The game was rigged.
That's a cheap shot answer, man. You're
really
not gonna pick that one.
As soon as you asked me, you're like Fallout 3 or 4. I'm like New Vegas.
New Vegas. Yeah. God. Like, I'm trying to think. Let's see. Okay. Do you think a beginning game should be easy though, or have introduce you some sort of challenge though? Because I feel like the one that comes to mind for me is like Mega Man X6. Like the level itself's relatively straightforward. There's boss fight still at the end, but the boss fight's actually really easy because it's like this it's this big like mech thing, but like there's a little like drone thing that's the actual weak thing. Like you shoot that and it goes down in like 3 hits or whatever. And it's like it's satisfying because you're just like, okay, like it was funny because like I think the first time I played it, I didn't realize that thing was there, and I was like, why isn't this thing dying? This thing is taking like forever to beat, and then I'm like, oh, and then I shot that thing 3 times. I'm like, okay, that's good enough.
I mean, I think it should be balanced. Like somewhat easy but somewhat challenging.
Yeah. Because
like I said, when I was a kid, like I mean, most kids, you got to look to your older sibling.
Yeah.
Can you get me past this? Or you have to scale down the difficulty if it has difficulty options. So like, if you make it too hard at the beginning,
no one's going to get past it.
No one's going to get past it. So,
looking at you, Bloodborne.
Actually, yeah.
Yeah, they were trying to play like 10 seconds. Like I mean,
I tried playing. I mean, yeah,
we're just not those people. I'm sorry. Actually, I did. I would.
Games. I loved it too. I loved the lore. I loved the feeling, everything. But when I played that by myself, I was like, can't even fucking get past the
little wolf in the room. You're like, this is silent. Like,
I mean, no, actually, I got past the wolf, but then like once I like started getting to where like
oh, we got outside. We couldn't figure out where to go.
well, yeah, but no, I played that before.
Oh, yeah,
I played
yeah.
Bloodborne before that, and I got pretty like decently far, and I got to like, I mean, I guess they would call it a mini boss.
Oh,
I
yeah.
couldn't get past him, and I'm like, well, I guess I can't play this game.
Yeah. You know, one thing that drives me insane is so this is actually a weird thing. Is just like, I get one of like kind of establishing just like the beginning of a game is like if you get the title screen, and I don't know why, but like I really hate if I happen to die before the title screen.
Oh yeah, then it's like, man,
Like I suck, man.
Isn't my game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just not good at this. Especially if it's like something dumb too. You're like, oh, like I just was not paying attention for a split second, or I just like, or like if it's a platform, you like accidentally just walked on a spike trap, like you just like hit the thing just like a second too early. And you're like, damn it, I wasn't supposed to die yet.
Yeah,
like that's dumb. But like also thinking about if I could remember where I was going with this.
yeah. I don't know. Where were you going with this?
I was still thinking about Bloodborne and just how
hard it is.
Yeah.
Hero Odyssey.
Oh no, I was saying Mario Odyssey.
Oh.
We have notes because we are only okay at this. I'm trying to think. Oh, I know. I realized. Sorry, it's come back around in my head a couple times. So this is once again kind of not get too tangential on it, but like like I said, big part of it is establishing just kind of not only like your character, but just also kind of just like the flow of the game. Mm-hmm. And I think it's real jarring when I don't want to like I'm just thinking about games that have like we were talking about, like with like kind of like bait and switch stuff or just like kind of I don't want to say misleading, but like like we're talking about like Sonic for instance. The first level of Sonic's always real easy, like Green Hill Zone, and like, but the whole thing about it is that it gives you the feeling of going fast. It's relatively straightforward, minimal jumping, minimal traps, which is fine. And it's like I don't want to. This is one of those ones where it's like trying to really. I mean, obviously there's a set because it's like Act 1 and Act 2 and stuff like that for that. But like once you get if we included all parts of the act, they're all acts part of the same zone as like the actual full start level, then immediately jumping into the next one in Sonic 1 where like you hit all these obstacles and it's not like it's all about these like obstructions. I'm like I feel like I got misled. I feel like I was supposed to be going fast and now it's not. And then we were talking about Metal Gear Solid, for instance, like you start off in Metal Gear Solid 2, you start off with Snake. But that's not who you're playing as the whole game. Yeah. How do you feel like? Okay, if you were just buying a game and that's how you start off, and then like immediately like after that, do you feel like lied to? Do you feel?
I mean, actually, I can think of a big giant controversy of this year. It's not really just the beginning, but the first half of The Last of Us 2, you're playing as Ellie.
Yeah. Is that
the second half? You play as the fucking.
But that's a whole half of a game, though.
The enemy, yeah, I know, but bait and switch like.
For I guess the other half,
like I'm playing the person that I hate the most.
Yeah, but that's like that's like I think just part of the storytelling. Oh though. Yeah, but I mean like I think that's that's
the storytelling of Naughty Dog.
I will say because then I was also thinking like another one is like Kingdom Hearts 2 also does it where it's like you're starting off as Roxas and you're just like. Who's this blonde boy I'm playing? Like, I was supposed to be playing as Sora.
He's not on the cover.
Yeah, actually he is.
Yeah, he probably is on the cover, but still.
But like if you're playing the last
one, something.
Yeah, you're like I'm sorry, I thought Sora was the main character.
Yeah,
and then you got the other thing too that's weird about like the beginning of Kingdom Hearts 2 is that like I'm trying to think like there's like obviously you get to pick your. Oh, actually, that's something we decided to talk about too. Is so. The beginning of Kingdom Hearts, I definitely know in 1. I'm trying to think how they do it in 2. You don't do any real fights for a little bit in Kingdom Hearts 2. Like you do get your Keyblade. There's like a lot of the early fights. There's not a lot of real fights because a lot of them you're using like a baton, not the actual like Keyblade. But that's another thing too is like establishing. How do you feel about doing all? So like Kingdom Hearts is this thing where it's like you do these choices at the beginning. And it kind of sets up the way you do your character build. Okay. There's like minimal customization in Kingdom Hearts, but there's like some stuff that's set and like, like the big one's always like picking between a sword, a shield, and a wand, and it dictates kind of what stat gets a buff. How do you feel about that? Like right at the beginning, like with no context.
I'd probably be more inclined not to like that
Yeah.
because I don't fully understand it yet.
Yeah,
I think it's like a lot to throw in.
yeah. The game does also for like reference to like Counter does a terrible job of really explaining what the benefits are of making those choices.
So yeah, I mean,
Like you get like the gist of it because you're like, okay, if I pick the sword, I'm gonna have better offense.
but like you don't know how that's going to play out further in the game. Like you might feel like your playstyle needs to be different.
Yeah, well, because like I would normally pick the sword for that situation, but the actual like one of like kind of like a better choice, arguably better choice, is picking the wand because you get an extra, I think like an extra point of MP. So you have more magic you're able to do at the beginning of the game. But you didn't know that. Like you don't know that's how that affects that. Similarly, I'm trying to think how far it actually is because he gets another set of like dialogue choices, and depending on which answer you pick, also sets up for like it like I think it's like if you pick the first answer on each one, it makes the early game really easy, but it kind of grind a little bit in the middle to make sure the last of it's not a pain in the ass.
I think it'll definitely be interesting to see what Cyberpunk does because I know you have to. Because I know, like, depending on like what your background is, you're gonna play on a different side of the map, and you're gonna have like a completely different.
That's cool. I like that
play style.
So yeah, I mean.
So I don't know. Like once you pick your person, you can't really go back.
Yeah, well, that's another thing too. Is like before you start the game, like, do you like when you get like Metal Gear Solid 5 does it weird where it's like you can customize him, but it's like after you do a little bit of like kind of a mission thing first, and then you get it. I don't know. That's
so like maybe that lets you kind of figure out how you want to play.
Yeah. Wait, how did Fallout 4 started with that? Like, because you don't decide. Like, isn't they like the game starts and then they go to look in the mirror, and that's when you do the customization.
Yeah, you get kind of a little story beat in the beginning, and then you look in the mirror and you pick what your person.
Do you like that, or do you prefer to get the customization like prior to the game?
I mean, in the case of Fallout 4, like I felt like that was a little bit more cosmetic because I didn't really pick. If I can remember, you don't really pick many like.
You don't do a lot of stat stuff.
Yeah, so I mean, it's really just cosmetic.
Yeah, well, that brings up a good point though, because you had stuff.
Do I want a monster factory and make a disgusting looking dad looking for my son?
No, but that brings up a good point though, because then it's also stuff like then with the stats thing, you look at like Star Wars: Knights of the Old Republic, and you're just like dumping stats and you're like, I don't know how this. I mean, and similarly to the same effect, kind of like Mass Effect too, a little bit, where it's like, I don't know where this is going. I don't know how often I'm going to need this stuff.
I mean, if anything, it kind of, makes those games more replayable because you can go back and go, wow, I played it this way. I kind of liked it, but I kind of want to go back and
wonder what it's like. I mean, same thing with like
a different way.
Dark Souls and everything like that. But those ones are like, I don't know. Like, there's no real, I think, real way to super cheese at the beginning of any of those games is kind of the point. But like, doing the character build at the beginning. I don't know. I like having just like a fresh clean slate for like any character customization thing. Like I'm like, I want to figure out this build as I go. Because if it's like, I don't want to start too predisposed with one way, because then it's like, you're starting off and then you're like, hey, like, man, I'm taking a lot of hits and they hurt a lot. I should up my DV, you know what I mean? Or vice versa. It's like, you know what? I'm not hitting hard enough. I should figure out how to do that,
Definitely.
I'm trying to think. Also, Cyberpunk's going to be interesting. I mean, like, I'm just trying to think. That stuff needs to come out, right?
And stuff,
huh?
With the cosmetics and stuff.
Yeah, like I mean, there's just it's going to be like crazy. Like, I should put my hand in front of my mouth while talking. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
I'm just thinking in terms of like, dialogue out.
Oh yeah. Right.
Well, actually, hang on. I just realized, because that reminded me too. It's weird. Destiny, I should have brought up too. Like, people give Destiny a lot of shit for its like lack of story and cohesiveness as a single player thing, because like a lot of it's based off its like multiplayer and doing raids and stuff like that. But I will say though, like both. I'm trying to think how Destiny 1 starts. It's been a while since I played it, but I think both start pretty interesting. Like, I mean, Destiny 2 starts off like right in the fray. You're like the whole tower is being attacked, and you're just like, okay, like I need to go grab a gun. And which, we talked about this a little bit, like losing all the power ups. So it's like, big thing with Destiny 2 was that like when it came out, you didn't get to carry over any of your guns, which was like I get it, but still like a little bit like.
So you're like, I don't have what I want.
Yeah, actually, the bigger thing that was disappointing for me with Destiny 2 was that I didn't get to, which like this didn't make sense. Like even if you started it at like 0 power or whatever, I think you should have got to carry over how your character looks. Like the only thing that looks wise that they carried over is just like the actual face, or I don't know if you were like a man or a woman or whatever. But like I feel like they should have let you carry over your armor and stuff. Even if they set it to 0, like I don't care about that. I just wanted to look like cohesiveness between my games. Like I'm like, oh, I'm starting in this armor that wasn't actually mine, and that's what I mean. Just
because I mean, if you're playing, if you're playing as the same person in Destiny 2, right?
Yeah.
Then what? Then I guess it wouldn't make sense.
It's up to you. I mean, you can choose like import or not, but it's like the import feature is almost null because you don't really carry over anything besides just the way that he like looks underneath.
Okay.
So that's why I'm like, and I get like the weapon thing because then they were like kind of revamped the weapon system and started from scratch. So I understood like why they didn't like everyone, and it was fun. Like I really liked the beginning of Destiny 2. Like I think it was okay. The start of that game did I think what I think like every game should do. It should obviously like make you want to play the rest of it, but like warrant it to begin with. So like a big thing with Destiny came out was like, hey, did we really need an actual second game? Was the thing you're like?
So why set you up for a reason? Why?
Yeah, I was like, I'm like, you know what? This feels good. I'm like, I'm happy. Like when I started, I'm like, I'm happy they made a full on sequel. And actually, speaking of sequels, that's one other thing too. If you're starting a sequel of a game that's an actual story connected sequel, do you want it to do like some sort of recap in the? So like an interesting one is Castlevania, for instance. Okay. Castlevania Symphony of the Night starts with what happens at the end of Castlevania Rondo of Blood.
And, I would like that.
Yeah, you like having a little.
It's almost like when you start a new season of a TV show.
You want that recap?
Yeah. Especially if they're going to lead like moments after whatever just happened, then that makes sense.
Yeah. Although it's just that they do also do the powers thing too, because like when you start as Alucard in Castlevania Symphony of the Night, like he has all these badass powers, and then he gets them like all stripped from him, and then you have to like get them all back. But he feels so badass at the beginning of that game. So yeah, like that's one where I'm like, you know what, I want to get back to that level. But other ones, I'm like, this is too much. I want to grow myself.
Okay.
Any other final points, man? Any other ones come to mind?
I think we covered it.
I think we covered all of it.
Unless there's anything else.
I don't know.
You, the viewers, please comment.
What are your favorite beginnings? Starts. What's something that like I said, like Final Fantasy 15 sticks out to me because it just like and 7 also. I'll say 7's like 7, especially the remake of 7 where you're doing like the bomb mission from the get go, like that introduced, which is another example of like introducing mechanics where it's like hey, like especially like for a remake game where you're like, okay, here's you've played Final Fantasy 7, here's how we're doing it, and here's like what's different, here's how this new like system plays out. It feels real good. I need to replay that game. I was gonna say if I beat it, I'm like destined to make that my first platinum. I want it real bad, but it's like I have to essentially play through the whole game like on hard, and I'm like it took me like I think 60 hours the first time, so I'm just like I just gotta dump another 60. It's fine.
Yeah. Do what it takes.
Mm-hmm. Oh, actually, just real quick. Overall, so we've mentioned a couple times, but do you like the Tarantino flashback? Like,
I love that.
It's not too tropey. It's not too.
Nope. I mean, especially like Christopher Nolan's Memento, movie plays backwards.
Just had a real Memento every time.
Always, yeah.
It's like one conversation where me and you don't talk about Christopher Nolan.
Like Quentin Tarantino or Christopher Nolan, they know how to do their chopped up storylines.
I know, that's really good.
You don't really need a beginning, a middle, and an end.
You need an end.
You don't need it in that order.
You need an end, and occasionally have a middle.
Too true.